Good morning. Welcome. We are live this morning with Shelley Kenow, and she's going to talk to us about helping our teens self advocate, our teens with IEPs, mind you, self advocate. Because at some point along their educational journey, they're going to have to learn to ask for what they want and need. They can't always rely upon us to do it, but we have to help them get there. Welcome, Shelley. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Kamyra. I'm very excited.
I am too. I am too. This is a special topic. I want to remind everybody that Shelley is a certified special ed teacher, and she's been a special educator for over 25 years. She's also an author. She's going to tell us a little more about that. And a master IEP coach, which I didn't know existed until I met her. So that's wonderful. We are live. If you're joining us live Tuesday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, please join the conversation. Just put your questions and comments in the comment section and we will address them live. Shelley will answer your questions. And you should take advantage of that, please. If you are watching a playback, thank you for joining us. Shelley won't be available to answer your questions, but you can dialogue with other people who are watching the playback. That often happens. So please feel free to still put your questions and comments in the comment section. Just know that Shelley won't be monitoring them 24/7. Okay, let's begin with you telling us a little bit about yourself. And don't forget to leave out your book. Don't leave out your book, mind you.
Okay.
I got that wrong. About yourself and your career journey and what it is that you do.
Well, thank you. So yeah, and for anybody who is watching in the replay, I will be checking back. So as Kamyra said, I won't be on immediately to answer, but I will try to answer any questions if you have any. So yes, my name is Shelley Kenow, and I am an education consultant. I've been in special education for over 25 years, as Kamyra said. Some of that has been as a teacher's aide or paraprofessional or teacher assistant, whatever the term that you might use in your area is. Some of that as a sub, which is what I am doing now again, because I am focusing more on the education consultant business side and then being a master IEP coach side. And then I had about 17 years of full-time special education teaching in my own classroom. And I have been all over the world. My husband was military when we met and married. And so I was able to work in England for 3 years and see some of the Department of Defense dependent schools and how they operated, as well as some of the British schools, which was really interesting to see how they approached children with special needs or children with disabilities. And so sitting in these hundreds of meetings, IEP meetings, which IEP stands for Individualized Education Program, during my teaching career, during my subbing and as an aide, I saw parents often look very overwhelmed, very misunderstood, like they weren't part of the team, which they, as parents of the child with the disability, are 100% supposed to be equal members of the team. And oftentimes they were crying. And I had the great privilege in one of my teaching positions to teach the students for several years. And so I had an opportunity to get to know their parents because I worked with their children for so long. And they would often tell me, well, I thought this is what the IEP said, or I thought this was a right, or I thought this. And I realized that these meetings would happen so quickly, oftentimes. And even if they didn't happen quickly, it was so much information at one time that they were often left having no clue. Even though they had been there, even though they might have given input, they really weren't an equal member because maybe the communication didn't continue between team members and the parents, or maybe the child is nonverbal. And so there were things happening during the days at school and the parents didn't know what was happening because their child didn't come home and tell them, or couldn't come home and tell them, like what a typically developing parent and child relationship. I know a lot of times we ask our kids, well, how was your day? It was fine. What'd you do? Nothing. But you can usually kind of get more information out of them if they're verbal. With a nonverbal child or with a child who is verbal but maybe doesn't always understand everything, those parents don't have that same knowledge. And so when I left my last teaching job, I'm a very praying type of person. And I said, Lord, what do you want for me now? because from the time I was 9, thought I wanted to be a teacher. And he said, it's time for you to start working with the families. So I started working with the families, like I said, in 2017, and it's been wonderful. And then in 2019, I found this Master IEP Coach Mentorship, which is an amazing program, and it's with Catherine Witcher. And she taught me and all the Master IEP coaches a different way to look at the IEP and the whole team. And while people look at me from the school side as an advocate, I really don't like to use the word advocate. I'm a coach. I come in and I want to help everybody be on the same page and be there truly for the student. And so I want to talk about my book. And one of the reasons that I wrote the book is to give as many people as possible a perspective from the parent side, and from the family side. So the book is called Those Who Can't Teach. And you can see that can't is in quotation marks. And that's because when I was teaching, I heard so many other people say to my students, oh, they can't read, they can't write, they can't do math facts, they can't run, they can't behave that way in my class, their family can't be happy, and just can't after can't after can't. And I thought, that's so wrong. These families, these individuals can do a myriad of things, and maybe they're not doing them at the same level or at the same pace as their peers, but they're still able to do them. And so the book is 10 chapters long, and you can read one chapter and never have to read another chapter and still have an insight into a family's life. All of the stories are true. I interviewed these different families that are in here, and they were very raw with what was happening in their lives. And even for myself, having known these families for so long, I still just had zero or almost zero knowledge of what their lives are really like, and how they're treated sometimes from the time the child is born, because the child was born with the disability. And other times, once their child were to get into school and they found out, oh, they don't read as quickly, or they don't write, or they don't do the math as quickly, or whatever their weaknesses were. And so that sort of treatment of them, they were very raw in how that felt and what they dealt with. But the joys that they experienced and the wonderful things that their families got to do are in this book as well, because their families are just like anybody else's family, to be honest. There's just a little bit of a different look to their journey than ours.
Thank you for that. We put the link to the book up. I think it would be wonderful for other families, if you're looking to read about a story that's similar to yours or something that's encouraging, pick up a copy of the book. The link is in our comment section. Let's start with defining IEP to make sure that everybody has the same definition for the conversation.
Absolutely. So an IEP, or an individualized education program or plan, I interchange that last part of it frequently. That is the document that drives special education. And that document was told through the Special Education Law of Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA. And there are certain parts of it that are supposed to be in every IEP. And there are certain members of the team that are supposed to be included in every IEP meeting. And the IEP, as I said, drives the specialized instruction, specially designed instruction that a child might be receiving if they have the IEP.
Okay. Now we're talking about families with teens now, but they may have secured their IEP much earlier in the in the student's education. How does a family how do they go about securing an IEP?
If you have a family who doesn't have an IEP currently, the way that they would secure that is by starting off with reaching out to the school staff, the teacher, the general ed and the special ed teacher, and the school principal, and you put the request in writing that you have concerns and you want your child tested for special education services. And then there's a whole process that starts after that of meetings and evaluations. And that could be a whole nother episode. But I know that's not the main idea of our topic today. So I don't want to go into too much more detail about that. But my biggest tip for anybody is anything you do, especially when it comes to special education, is make sure it's in writing, because writing is like concrete in a sense. Is it definitely can be looked back upon and say, oh, this is when this happened. And for a lot of things, there are timelines that the school has to adhere to. And if you just verbally say, I want my child tested, a teacher or a staff member might agree with you, but they might get busy and forget. So if it's in writing, then you can say, well, I asked you on October 19th to get my child, the process started. And so even if you have a conversation with someone like you and I are having right now, you would want to follow that up with a written email. Hey, this is what I think we talked about, and this is what I think was the outcome of the discussion. Is this the same understanding that you have? And it's not, you're not trying to be adversarial. You're just trying to make sure that you're coming away from these conversations with the same thoughts as somebody else.
Okay. Thank you. I want to remind people, if you have questions or comments for Shelley, please put them in the comment section and we'll address them live. Everything that you said was parent-driven, family-driven, the adult-driven.
Yes.
But let's say that happened in elementary school and the student is aging and the student is now a teen. How can parents best help this student to learn to self-advocate? Because they won't always have the parents going to these meetings and talking to teachers and taking the lead.
Yes. So self-advocacy is huge. And again, that federal law of IDEA, at any point when the child, even in the elementary stages, if the child is able and will be able to understand what is happening in the meeting, the child is always welcome to come at the parent's request. By the time the child is hitting 14 and a half to 16, most school districts are then inviting the student to attend the meeting as well. And you really want to help your child understand that they have a disability, and that is why they get this special service where they get pulled out of class, or a teacher comes in and helps them, or a therapist, whatever it is. And you want them to really own that they have that disability, and you want to talk to them about their strengths and weaknesses and help them be able to articulate their own strengths and weaknesses. And the earlier you can start doing that, the better. But if you are starting this now, just at the tween and teen ages, most definitely have that conversation with them. I have been so surprised at how many parents have never told their child, you have an eligibility to get special education because you have ADHD, or you have autism, or you have a specific learning disability, or you have an intellectual, whatever that, there's 13 or 14 eligibility areas that someone can become eligible for an IEP. And a lot of parents I don't know if it's intentional, but it just doesn't happen. And so that's the first step, is talk to your child about their own strengths and weaknesses. What do they think their strengths and weaknesses are? What do they think they need help with? As I mentioned before, there are specific sections in every IEP. And once you hit that 14 and a half and older, you also start getting a section called transition. And what the transition talks about is what the child thinks they might do once they finish high school. Are they going to go to college? Are they going to go to military? Are they going to go to trade school? Are they going to get a job? Are they whatever other options for education there might be? It's also employment. What kind of job might you be getting? What kind of field do you think you want to go into? And then also independent living. And how are they going to live? Are they going to live in a dorm? Are they going to live at home? Are they going to live independently, completely in their own apartment? And these transition plans are to help them begin to prepare for that. Now, we all know, at 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 35, we don't always know what we're going to be when we grow up, And so those options are going to change, and that's perfectly okay. But the idea is to get the student thinking about what life will look like when I don't get up and go to school every day, and that's what's expected of me every day. And so talking to your child about that. The other section that is in every IEP from beginning to end is an accommodations and modifications section. And in that accommodations and modifications section, we do a really bad job, and I'm including myself in this, of making sure that it is truly something, especially at the high school and the middle school age, because the social side of things starts to become more important to the child than the academic side of things.
Mhm.
They don't want to be looking different. They don't want it to be known that their test looks different, or that they leave the room to go take the test, or that they get more time to take the test. And so it becomes a balancing act, and it really needs to have the student included as to, do you understand why you get this accommodation, how it helps you,
Mhm.
and do you utilize it? And if you don't utilize it, why don't you utilize it? And then have that conversation with them of, you know, why they would need it, and what might happen if they don't use it, and what happens if they do use it.
Mhm.
And then something that I've been suggesting for a few years now, as far as one of the self-advocacy tools, is teachers want to help students. That's why teachers go into teaching. But they get overwhelmed. They're still human. They still forget things. They still get in a hurry, and something gets forgotten. And so, depending on the number of accommodations that your child might have, if you can put it on a 3x5 card, or maybe if it's front and back, or maybe a 5x7 index card, or if it works better for you to have a sheet of paper that the accommodations are typed out on. And when an assessment is coming up, or when a homework assignment is given, or wherever the accommodation is supposed to be given, then if it's not given, or the child doesn't recognize that it's been given, then they have that piece of paper or that index card. And once they've been taught by you, more specifically, this kind of thing will come from the parents, but it can come from the teachers. Once they've been taught, directly taught, and I'm emphasizing that because that is so important, because oftentimes we'll say, oh, here's your accommodation, go use it, but we don't teach them how to use the accommodations.
Yes.
And then we say, oh, go self-advocate, well, go tell the teacher you didn't get this. Well, that's not really teaching them. You need to teach them words to use. You need to practice. You need to make sure that they're doing it respectfully, again, remembering that teachers are human, and we want to help you, but sometimes we just forget. And so just going up and giving that gentle reminder of, Mrs. Kenow, I thought I was supposed to have choices that were only 3 multiple choice instead of 4, or 4 instead of 5. I don't see that happened on this assessment. And then, the teacher can say, oh, well, here's what someone else's test looked like. And it has the 5 questions, and yours only or the 5 choices, and yours only has 4 choices. And so that way the teacher can show them, because teachers are often preparing these things before they hand them out, as to minimize that different look
Yes.
for the students. And so sometimes their accommodations have already been included, but it doesn't, to even the student getting the accommodation, look different
Yes.
than to somebody else. And so wanting to make sure that, they can see the difference. Or, by the way, I'm supposed to have these directions. And I think this was a question that was posed by one of your audience members, of, the testing formats and the different, yes. Oh, no, not that one. That's not the one. But it was something along the lines of, when they get into high school, it's so difficult because the testing formats are all so different, and then instructions are different. And yeah, that's the one. Instructions are the most difficult. Then a teacher pulls out something totally new. And so again, this is truly where that self-advocacy comes in, because if your child knows, hey, my directions are supposed to look like this, or my tests are supposed to look like this, then when a new test comes out or when the teacher pulls up something different, then the child can go to that teacher and, again, very respectfully, very nicely, after they've been taught how to do this, say, I know that you just handed this out to me. It doesn't look any different than anybody else's, or do you have a different one? Did you just forget? It's all those types of phrases too that they need to learn and to be taught. And sometimes teachers, again, we're not intentionally forgetting to give the accommodations. It's just we get doing our things and we get focused and we forget. And so sometimes, you need that reminder. And you are unfortunately probably going to run up against a teacher who says, well, here, or they might just make the accommodations right there, or, oh, just do this one and I'll change it later, or I'll change your grade or whatever. And that is unfortunate. And at that point, your child then needs to say, no, I really need to, in order for me to show you what I can really do, I need it to be in this way. How can we arrange it so that I can use the format that I'm supposed to use? And go ahead. You were going to ask.
That's perfect. We have a question from Monica.
Okay.
And so I want to make sure that we put her question up. And I also wanted to make sure that we remind parents, two of the good points that you made as far as teaching self-advocacy is that putting their needs on an index card or typing it into the notes section of their phone or something that they can access so the students have the reminder and can share it with whomever they need to share it with, but also the practicing of the language and tone, and so that when it's time, it's automatic. They're not searching for words, and they've done this so many times that they know exactly how to say it. It won't come out robotic, but they will make the points that they need to make.
Yes.
So thank you for that. And we're going to Monica. Monica says, what do you do if the school does not see the need for testing for IEP? My daughter has been struggling since elementary, now entering high school. It's gotten worse. She really needs accommodations.
So, Monica, thank you. That's a great question. And if it's truly just accommodations that she needs and she doesn't need specially designed instruction, you could ask for something called a 504. And a 504 is from the Rehabilitation Act. It's called the Section 504 Rehabilitation Act. And that allows for students who don't need that specially designed instruction, but just need some modifications or accommodations to the work to be able to receive that. And the process looks a little bit different, but again, you put it in writing that you want this done. And if you're asking for a special education evaluation in writing and they deny you, they have to put it in writing why they are denying the evaluation process. And if they put it in writing that they are denying the evaluation process, they have to tell you why they're denying that. And then you have some documentation that you can then proceed with getting an independent education evaluation or an IEE. You don't just have to say, oh, well, the school says no, and I'm done. You have more steps that you can take. And I'd be happy to go into that more in detail with you, Monica, if you want to reach out to me specifically, or, again, another episode sometime, because there are so many intricacies, to an IEP and individuals. That's something that I focus on a lot, and I remind people a lot, is both the special education law and the special education document start with the same letter, because that's so important. They both start with the letter I, and it either stands for individualized or individual. And so it's always remembering that even if you have two children and they're twins, they still most likely won't get the exact same services because they're processing different. Their academics are different. Their needs are different. They're different people. And so always remembering to focus on the individual and individualizing their education program and having data to drive what are the needs and what are the weaknesses, but as well as the strengths. We can strengthen strengths you can use strengths to strengthen weaknesses. And so focusing on those kinds of things as well. And I could go on and on about that, but I'm trying to stay to the
That's okay.
self-advocacy.
We have put Shelley's website, so you can go to her website and contact her through that. I encourage you to do that, not to give up. I wanted to ask you about, we talked about practicing language and tone, if you could give us some specifics on that. But I also know that you have some research and some data points. You mentioned data that is important to get out to our audience today. So I want to make sure that you hit upon those things too. So
yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. So let me do the data points first.
Yep.
And so, yeah, 40% of students with disabilities who have desire for post-secondary education don't often achieve that goal. And that comes back to them not having the self-advocacy skills. And so you want to work on them. And again, it's important that they know that they have an IEP, that they have rights within that IEP, why they have the IEP and how it can help them. Those are such key points. And that, again, that explicit instruction is very key. And remembering that students with disabilities are still almost 3 times as likely to drop out of high school as their non-disabled peers. And that often comes from them not knowing how to ask for what they're supposed to be getting. And they don't feel that they have any control, and they don't feel like the system is set up to help them. And so they feel like if they can just leave the system and get on with life, that things will be better for them. And we all know that that's not the truth. That unfortunately, that there is no proof in the pudding of that. There was another. Oh, I just want to read you 10 non-academic behaviors that are associated with post-school success. Knowledge of strengths and limitations, actions related to strengths and limitations, disability awareness, employment, goal setting and attainment, persistence, proactive involvement, self-advocacy, supports, and utilization of resources. So making sure too that your child knows where can they go for help? What teacher do they ask? What department do they go to? Even when, and teens, we start college in the teens years. And so even when they're at college, a 504 transfers better into the college setting, but because that's more of the kind of falls under the whole world, or the whole United States, I should say, where the special education law is really just for students K through 12, or some students will stay longer than that. But so at the college level, there are disability offices, and you want to make sure that your child knows, I need to go to the disability office, and it might be called something different at all the different colleges and universities, but there's something there, student services, something along those lines. And you want to make sure that your child knows to go to that place and say, hey, you know, when I was in high school, I struggled with X, Y, and Z, and these are some of the things that were helpful to me. How do I get those here at the college as well? Extended time, tests read, those sorts of things are certainly applicable at the college level also. So some of the language and that tone that you mentioned, those are so key, because if you think about it, if your child comes to you and automatically has this self-righteous attitude, you almost always are going to say, no, whatever you're asking for, you're not going to have. I'm not going to give it to you.
Yes.
And so you want to make sure that they have that humble but self-confident approach. I know what I need. I know what I'm allowed to have. I am asking you to work with me and help me show you everything I really know in the way that I can access it and show it to you the best. And that is what my accommodations and my modifications are for.
And unapologetically, as you said, confidently say,
yes,
this is what we're coming to the end of our time together. But I want to summarize with my takeaways is that, one, everybody has something that makes them unique.
absolutely.
So if you think you're protecting your child by not involving them in this process and teaching them to self-advocate, you are doing the exact opposite. It's okay. You just explained to them, this is what makes you unique. Everybody has something. I once had a boss who was worried about her daughter going to sleepaway camp because she would be the only child with X. And the daughter said, yes, but I won't be the only. Other kids will be the only child with something else, with Y.
Right. That's beautiful. Yeah.
Isn't it beautiful? And it came from the child.
Yeah.
And I think if we take that approach, so go ahead and tell your student what it is that they have, explain to them over and over and over, and help them so that they can explain and practice and take it with them, whether it's to educators, future employers. This comes into play in employment. Sometimes, you may need an extra day to get that memo out, but you can do it.
Right. Absolutely.
So we want to do that. And let's help them communicate. What is your one takeaway, Shelley, if we only remember one thing and we want to help our teens self-advocate so that at some point they put us out of a job, but are still confident and very highly productive in the world?
Well, something that, and you had asked me to make sure that my poster, it's on that side, my poster showed, because what it says, which you can't see all the words, unfortunately, but we know who we are, but not who we will be. So that means we know who we are in this exact moment, but we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 5 years from now. And if we are self-advocating, we can become, and this comes, you can see the caterpillar chrysalis kind of hanging there. And that's because of the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. We don't know what beautiful butterfly we're going to be. But if we can have somebody support us as we go from the caterpillar into that butterfly and help us learn and let us struggle, we have to struggle, we'll be extremely successful.
And everybody struggles, and we all make it through because we can all do hard things.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, absolutely.
I know it's scary, parents, but you can help your student.
Yeah.
Your student's going to amaze you.
Absolutely. That's so true. There are stories in my book where doctors, teachers, years later, I never thought that this person would be able to do X, Y, and Z. Almost every chapter has a situation like that.
Thank you, Shelley, for spending time with us. This was very productive. I know there are going to be more questions in the comment section, so we'll be going back to that. We're going to put up some other links that should help you, direct you. Be sure to check out her website. That'll give you more information. Join us tomorrow on Wednesday when we have coffee with Jen and Sharon. Same time, same place, 10:30 a.m., Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Your Teen for Parents Facebook page or Your Teen for Parents YouTube channel. They always have fun things to say. They come at it from the parents' perspective. You come, bring your coffee, your tea, hot cocoa, as we were talking about. It's getting a little cool.
Soda.
Yeah, and have a good time. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you.